Science. My name is Thea Holcomb. I'm a high school student, and today we're going to talk about sex. Operating on the assumption that you're human, you've almost certainly heard of sex. In case you haven't, to get you up to speed, sex is the process by which many organisms ensure their continued existence. Here's the thing though, sex is more complicated than that, because life is complicated. We know that sex is kind of complicated, so what is sex education? The lifelong process of acquiring information and forming attitudes, beliefs, and values. It encompasses sexual development, sexual and reproductive health, interpersonal relationships, affection, intimacy, body image, and gender roles. This, as far as I'm concerned, is a great definition. But in the interest of finding a representative sample, let's also look at what Urban Dictionary has to say. The importance of sex ed is remembered with essential to preventing teen pregnancy, but the majority of the definitions are less optimistic, my favorite of which is where they try to scare you out of having sex with pictures of diseased genitals. Perhaps the discouraging thoughts we find here offer us valuable insight on whether sex education is something that students tend to feel is actually, educational. Now ask yourself, where do people go when they have questions? Which, when ventured into unguided, can be a place that is frighteningly full of misinformation. The problem is that so much online content about sexual health is not accurate by any stretch of the imagination, or is so laden with bias that it feels more like being pelted with judgments than actually receiving information. Not every teen is eager to chat it up with their parents about sex, so if not always the internet, where can teens turn? Enter the Peer Educator. Teen Council is a national program run by Planned Parenthood consisting of teens who meet a couple hours a week to talk about sexual health. In our meetings, we cover everything from STIs and safe sex to contraception and consent. These meetings offer training for our role as peer educators. Much of the work of the peer educator is in the classroom. Peer education takes full advantage of the fact that teens influence their peers. Rather than students encountering sex education from someone decades older than them, local teens are taught by local teens. In this upcycled edition of sex ed, peers transcend the limitations of a traditional classroom teacher in that those being educated feel like the educator understands their perspective. It is amazing how having an approachable peer leader establish the classroom as a safe space can create a warm environment where students are so willing and eager to share their experiences and explore their own thoughts and values. But the work of a peer educator only just begins in the classroom. Using the same skill set we've developed while standing in front of a group of students, in our communities, we establish ourselves as a safe person to turn to. At lunch once, some friends wanted to know the difference between hormonal and copper IUDs, so I brought this to the table. My teacher didn't understand how emergency contraception works, so I explained to the class. So what does it look like when someone in a classroom or the community approaches a peer educator with questions? Someone told me that condoms fail all the time. How effective are condoms in actually preventing pregnancy? On average, condoms prevent pregnancy about 82% of the time. But that rate is so low only because so many people don't know how to correctly use condoms. If you use them correctly, they'll prevent pregnancy about 98% of the time. Okay, so how do you correctly use a condom? I'm really glad that you asked. Unfortunately, in Utah classrooms, we aren't allowed to explain how to effectively use condoms. There are some good internet resources that can help you out. Venereal disease, STD, STI, this terminology, it baffles me. Over the years, a lot of different terms have been used, but right now the most accepted is STI, or sexually transmitted infection. It used to be STD, or sexually transmitted disease, but it was changed recently to reflect a more medically accurate perspective and to remove the stigma that's associated with that big scary word disease. What the heck is trichomoniasis? Trichomoniasis is an STI that's often spread through vaginal intercourse. The good thing is that it can be cured with just one dose of an oral drug. Common symptoms include painful urination, unusual discharge, and itching, regardless of a person's sex. But most often it's asymptomatic, which means that people who have it don't even know that they have it because they don't show any symptoms. That's why it's so important to get tested. Is it okay to be gay? It's really common for teens to have questions about sexuality and the validity of their identities. You're definitely not the only one who's wondering. Some people feel like others being in same-sex relationships goes against their values. It's important to note, though, that people of all identities, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning, can lead healthy and productive lives. Every person has the right to explore and express their sexuality without the fear of shame or judgment. So often, when my peers approach me with questions like these, seeking this or that piece of information, at least a sliver of what they're wondering is, am I normal? So let's talk about normal. Part of the point of peer education is to give teens in our communities the opportunity to understand that there is no such thing as the elusive normal. Peer educators are here to say that armed with information that empowers you to make informed decisions, you are going to be okay. Normal isn't really necessary. After all, when I think of teenage sex educators, normal isn't the first word that pops into my head. But if you ask me, since peer education allows sex ed to reach the community in ways that go far beyond pictures of diseased genitals, it turns out to be pretty brilliant. An idea that, unlike trichomoniasis, is certainly worth spreading. Thank you.